I have benefited from what I practice. I don't take any medications. I've never had surgery, never been hospitalized. But I agree with much of Sanjeev, what he said, but I want to answer your question because she asked a very specific question about remuneration and how medicine is practiced. Now, Sanjeev comes from Harvard Medical School, which is the gold standard, and there are many other places like that. But here are some statistics. Here are some statistics, and you can look them up, okay? I didn't make these up. Between 36 to 40% of patients suffer from iatrogenic disease, which means disease that has been a result of medical treatment. 80% of pharmaceuticals are of optional or marginal benefit, which means if you didn't use them, it wouldn't make a bit of a difference to the natural history of disease, except save you medicine, some side effects and some money. Next time you watch television, look at the commercial for any pharmaceutical, whether it's for migraine. It starts with it could give you sexual impotence, it ends with it could cause death. In between is the total panorama. Also, the most common heart surgery is CABG, coronary artery bypass. For stable angina, not unstable angina, but stable angina, it doesn't prolong life in more than 2% of people, but it's the most common procedure. The second most common procedure for heart is angioplasty. Doesn't prolong life for stable angina for more than 3% of people. These are alarming statistics, and yet this surgery is being done everywhere. Okay, back surgery, 98% is useless. Hysterectomy, 95% is useless. So we are talking about huge amounts of money that are spent on procedures. Okay, our father would make a diagnosis, a neurological diagnosis with precision. Today, if you have a headache, you go to the emergency room. If you don't walk out with a CAT scan or an MRI, you're lucky, okay? Because nobody has the time to do it. So we have a crisis. What we call health reform is not health reform. It's insurance reform. It has nothing to do with health crisis. Most of the expenditure is end-of-life care, okay? Nobody is allowed to die in the house. I just made my will and I said, I'm not going to die in a hospital. I'm not going to have any of these resuscitative procedures. I've been in community hospitals where the same standards don't apply, and I see doctors correcting something called hypokalemia or hyperkalemia, which is a little minor, not minor, but aberration in electrolytes, which if you didn't correct would cause a cardiac arrest and the patient would die. But they keep correcting it even though what is there has no life there. So a lot of what we call prolongation of survival is actually prolongation of suffering. For the patient, for the relatives, the only people who make money are the medical providers. So this has been a huge problem. I've discussed it with politicians. I've even brought it up to our president, okay? But we have a system, and this again, nothing to do with the gold standard where Sanjeev practices. We have a system where for every congressman there are 28 lobbyists in Washington. Okay, and their only business, they are either medical industrial complex lobbyists or they are military industrial So, where do we think our country makes money? They supply arms to Pakistan, they supply arms to Afghanistan, they supply arms to India. They go to Dubai and, they trade. So we have huge problems when the incentive for treatment becomes money and it becomes then a corrupting influence. If you go to a baker, what's he going to sell you? Bread. What do you think? How do you think chemotherapists make money? For every chemotherapy treatment that they give. Am I saying you shouldn't have chemotherapy? I'm not saying that. But I'm saying question. I ask everyone here to be a difficult patient. Question your doctors, get the statistics, go to Google, get the information, and you will know more than the average medical provider.